United States District Court, Southern District of New York, Casandra Ventura, plaintiff Sean Combs, Bad Boy Entertainment, Bad Boy Records, Epic Records, Combs Enterprises, LLC, and Docor. 1 to 10 defendants. Civil case number 23-CV-10098. Complaint, jury trial demand, plaintiff Casandra Ventura, Ms. Ventura or plaintiff, by and through her attorneys at Wigdor LLP, alleges as follows. This is a case about a woman who was exploited by a man who exerted complete control over her and her life. Beginning in 2005, when plaintiff was 19 and defendant Sean Combs was 37, Mr. Combs used his power and influence in the music industry to lure Ms. Ventura into a professional and romantic relationship. Over the next decade, he abused her violently and sexually exploited her for his own entertainment and introduced her to a lifestyle of excessive alcohol and substance abuse. Ms. Ventura brings this action pursuant to the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, the New York Adult Survivors Act, and other laws to seek justice and accountability. For over a decade, she was forced into an environment of abuse and fear, with Mr. Combs exercising unchecked control over her personal, professional, and financial life. When she tried to leave, he would threaten her, blow up her phone, and stalk her physically and electronically. Defendant Combs raped Ms. Ventura in her own home. He trafficked her across state lines for sex. He forced her to take drugs. He made her carry his firearms illegally. He blew up a man's car after he was seen talking to her. He controlled every aspect of her career, her relationships, her health, and her body. Now, finally, Ms. Ventura is standing up to seek accountability and to tell her story on her own terms. Defendant Combs is a prominent figure in the music and entertainment industries. He is a Grammy Award-winning rapper and producer, founder of Bad Boy Entertainment, and creator of Ciroc Vodka. Through his businesses and fame, Mr. Combs cultivated a public image of glamour, success, and charisma, while privately subjecting plaintiff to terrifying abuse behind closed doors. At the time this action is brought, Ms. Ventura is no longer under Mr. Combs' control. She has found the strength and support to come forward and detail her experiences. She brings this lawsuit not just to reclaim her own power, but to serve as a voice for other women who suffer in silence. Jurisdiction and venue. This court has jurisdiction over this action pursuant to 28 U.S.C. section 1331 because plaintiff brings claims arising under the laws of the United States, specifically 18 U.S.C. section 1591. The court also has supplemental jurisdiction over plaintiff's state law claims pursuant to 28 U.S.C. section 1367. Venue is proper in this district pursuant to 28 U.S.C. section 1391b because a substantial part of the events or omissions giving rise to the claims occurred in this district. Defendant Combs resides in this district, maintains his primary business offices here, and owns property in Manhattan. The parties. Plaintiff Casandra Ventura is a citizen of the United States and a resident of California. She is a recording artist, model, and actress known professionally as Cassie. At the time of the events alleged in this complaint, Ms. Ventura resided in New York and frequently traveled across the United States and internationally for work and at Mr. Combs' direction. Defendant Sean Combs is a music producer, artist, and businessman, also known professionally as Diddy, P. Diddy, and Puff Daddy. He is the founder and owner of Bad Boy Entertainment and the parent company Combs Enterprises. Mr. Combs maintains residences in Manhattan, Los Angeles, and Miami, and conducts substantial business in this district. He is a citizen of the United States and resident of New York and Florida. Defendant Bad Boy Entertainment is a record label and entertainment company founded by defendant Combs. It has a principal place of business in New York and operates under the umbrella of Combs Enterprises. Defendant Bad Boy Records is a division of Bad Boy Entertainment and also operates in New York. Ms. Ventura signed a recording contract with Bad Boy Records under the direction of Mr. Combs. Defendant Epic Records is a division of Sony Music Entertainment and entered into a joint venture with Bad Boy Records during the period in which plaintiff was signed. Epic Records was involved in distributing and promoting plaintiff's music and concerts, Defendant Combs Enterprises LLC is a limited liability company through which Mr. Combs conducts much of his business. It oversees various ventures including Bad Boy Entertainment and other lifestyle and brand businesses. It is headquartered in New York City. Plaintiff is currently unaware of the true names and capacities of defendants sued herein as Docor 1 to 10, and therefore sues those defendants by such fictitious names. Plaintiff will amend this complaint to allege their true names and capacities when ascertained. Factual allegations. Plaintiff first met defendant Combs in 2005. She was 19 years old and had recently begun working in the music industry. She was introduced to Combs while attending events in New York City. Combs offered to sign her to Bad Boy Records and help her launch a music career. Ms. Ventura accepted the offer and they began working together professionally. Combs quickly began asserting control over plaintiff's personal and professional life. He dictated what she wore, where she went, and who she could talk to. He required her to be available to him at all times and threatened to derail her career if she did not comply with his wishes. He discouraged her from working with other producers and made it clear that her success depended solely on his approval. Over time, Combs made romantic advances toward plaintiff. He insisted she stay with him at hotels and required her to attend events as his date. Ms. Ventura initially resisted, but Combs was persistent and used his influence and position to pressure her into a sexual relationship. By 2006, she was fully under his control, romantically and professionally. Combs demanded that plaintiff engage in sexual acts at his direction. He required her to perform sex acts for his entertainment and for the satisfaction of others. He frequently filmed these acts without her consent and used the recordings to control her. He made her watch videos of him having sex with other women and would berate her if she showed discomfort. He introduced plaintiff to a lifestyle of drugs and alcohol. He would give her ecstasy, cocaine, and other substances before forcing her to perform sexual acts. He normalized this behavior and framed it as part of the industry and their relationship. Plaintiff began to feel that she had no choice but to participate in order to maintain her career and safety. Combs trafficked plaintiff across state lines and internationally. He arranged trips under the guise of promoting her music or attending events, but the true purpose was often to make her available for sex. He forced her to accompany him on vacations and business trips where she would be expected to have sex with him and others. He used private jets and luxury accommodations to carry out this trafficking, and plaintiff felt she could not refuse without suffering consequences. Combs isolated plaintiff from her friends and family. He monitored her communications, limited her interactions with others, and kept her financially dependent on him. He frequently threatened her with violence if she disobeyed. He carried firearms and made clear that he was capable of using them. On one occasion, he told plaintiff that he would kill her if she ever left him. Combs' behavior was not limited to private settings. He humiliated plaintiff in public and in front of colleagues. He would grope her in front of others, scream at her during meetings, and demand that she be submissive. He used intimidation to assert power over her, and those in his circle were aware of his conduct. Some even enabled it by arranging logistics or staying silent. One of the most traumatic events occurred in 2018 when plaintiff attempted to leave the relationship. Combs became enraged. He showed up at her home uninvited, banged on the door, and threatened her through text and voicemail. When she refused to let him in, he broke in and raped her. She was terrified and felt powerless to report the incident because of Combs' fame and influence. After the rape, Combs apologized and tried to manipulate plaintiff into staying. He promised to change, offered money and gifts, and insisted he would get therapy. He bombarded her with calls and messages. Plaintiff attempted to cut contact, but Combs would show up wherever she went. He harassed her family and friends and hacked her phone. He kept her under surveillance using private investigators and technology. Combs forced plaintiff to carry firearms on his behalf. He claimed it was for protection, but plaintiff feared legal consequences and bodily harm. On multiple occasions, she was made to transport weapons across state lines. She was never licensed or trained to do so and believed she had no choice but to comply with his demands. In one instance, Combs became furious after seeing plaintiff speak to another man at a party. Shortly afterward, that man's car exploded in front of a hotel. While plaintiff has no direct proof that Combs was responsible, she believed it was a message to her and one consistent with his previous threats and violent behavior. Despite the trauma, plaintiff stayed in the relationship for years because she was financially dependent, emotionally manipulated, and feared for her life. Combs had created an environment where she could not leave safely. He surrounded himself with staff and security who enforced his will, and plaintiff was made to feel that no one would believe or protect her if she spoke out. Eventually, plaintiff was able to separate from Combs and begin building a life independent of his control. However, the psychological, emotional, and professional damage lingers. She has suffered from depression, anxiety, PTSD, and career setbacks. She brings this action under the Adult Survivors Act and other laws to hold Combs and his companies accountable for the trauma he inflicted. Causes of action. First cause of action, violation of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, 18 U.S.C. Section 1591, against defendant Sean Combs. Plaintiff realleges and incorporates by reference all preceding paragraphs. Defendant Combs knowingly recruited, enticed, harbored, transported, provided, and obtained plaintiff for the purpose of engaging in commercial sex acts in violation of federal law. He used force, fraud, and coercion to compel plaintiff to engage in sexual acts across state lines and internationally. These acts were done for Combs' personal gratification and for the benefit of his associates and business interests. Combs facilitated travel, lodging, and scheduling of these encounters. He provided drugs and alcohol to plaintiff to impair her ability to consent and conditioned her participation in the music business on engaging in these acts. At no time did plaintiff voluntarily agree to be trafficked. Combs' conduct constitutes sex trafficking in violation of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. As a direct result, plaintiff has suffered physical injury, emotional distress, economic loss, and other damages. She is entitled to compensatory and punitive damages, attorney's fees, and costs. Second cause of action, gender-motivated violence, the New York City Administrative Code, Section 10-10104, against defendant Sean Combs. Plaintiff realleges and incorporates by reference all preceding paragraphs. Defendant Combs committed multiple acts of violence against plaintiff that were motivated, at least in part, by her gender. These include rape, physical assaults, forced sex acts, emotional abuse, and threats of harm. Combs' violence was used to control and dominate plaintiff. Under the New York City Victims of Gender-Motivated Violence Protection Law, plaintiff is entitled to damages, including compensatory and punitive damages, attorney's fees, and injunctive relief. Third cause of action, sexual battery, against defendant Sean Combs. Plaintiff realleges and incorporates by reference all preceding paragraphs. Defendant Combs engaged in non-consensual sexual contact with plaintiff. This includes forced penetration, oral sex, and other sexual acts to which plaintiff did not consent. These acts constitute sexual battery under New York law. As a result of these assaults, plaintiff suffered physical pain, mental anguish, humiliation, and permanent emotional damage. She seeks actual and punitive damages plus attorney's fees and costs. Fourth cause of action, sexual harassment, New York State Human Rights Law. Against defendant Sean Combs and defendant companies, plaintiff realleges and incorporates by reference all preceding paragraphs. Defendants engage in unlawful sexual harassment in violation of the New York State Human Rights Law. Combs subjected plaintiff to unwanted sexual advances, coercive sex acts, and a hostile work environment based on sex. The defendant companies were aware of Combs' conduct and failed to take any action to prevent or correct the harassment. Plaintiff was employed by and under the control of defendants. During the time of the harassment, she was retaliated against when she attempted to assert her autonomy, and her ability to pursue her career was conditioned on submitting to Combs' demands. As a result, plaintiff suffered lost income, reputational harm, and emotional trauma. She seeks damages, including back pay, front pay, emotional distress damages, punitive damages, and attorney's fees and costs. Fifth, cause of action, sexual harassment, New York City human rights law. Against defendant Sean Combs and defendant companies, plaintiff realleges and incorporates by reference all preceding paragraphs. Defendant's actions also violated the New York City human rights law, which prohibits sexual harassment and discrimination in the workplace. Combs' conduct created a hostile environment, and the other defendants failed to address or stop the abuse despite being in positions of authority and having knowledge of the misconduct. The abuse was continuous, pervasive, and occurred in the context of plaintiff's professional role. It had the purpose and effect of unreasonably interfering with her work and personal life. Plaintiff was denied equal terms, conditions, and privileges of employment due to her gender and her refusal to fully comply with Combs' demands. Plaintiff is entitled to damages, including compensatory, punitive, and equitable relief, as well as attorney's fees and costs. Sixth cause of action, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Against defendant Sean Combs, plaintiff realleges and incorporates by reference all preceding paragraphs. Combs' conduct toward plaintiff was extreme, outrageous, and beyond the bounds of human decency. He physically and sexually abused her, manipulated and isolated her, and threatened violence to maintain control. He engaged in a sustained campaign of terror that caused plaintiff severe emotional distress. As a result, plaintiff has experienced lasting psychological trauma, anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues. She continues to suffer from the long-term effects of the abuse. Combs' conduct was intentional and malicious, and plaintiff is entitled to compensatory and punitive damages. Event cause of action, negligence. Against all defendants, plaintiff realleges and incorporates by reference all preceding paragraphs. Defendants owed plaintiff a duty of care to prevent foreseeable harm, particularly in light of the employer-employee and mentor-protege relationships. Instead, defendants negligently hired, retained, and supervised individuals who facilitated or failed to prevent Combs' misconduct. The defendant companies enabled Combs' abuse by failing to institute appropriate policies or safeguards. They turned a blind eye to his behavior and allowed it to continue unchecked for years. Their negligence directly and proximately caused plaintiff's injuries. As a result, plaintiff has suffered substantial physical, emotional, and financial harm and is entitled to damages, attorney's fees, and costs. Eighth cause of action, gross negligence. Against all defendants, plaintiff realleges and incorporates by reference all preceding paragraphs. Defendant's conduct went beyond mere negligence and rose to the level of gross negligence. They acted with reckless disregard for plaintiff's safety, knowing the risks involved and choosing to ignore them. They enabled Combs' behavior by failing to intervene despite clear warning signs and previous incidents. Gross negligence is demonstrated by the repeated, prolonged, and systemic nature of the abuse, coupled with the silence or complicity of those in power. This disregard for human safety and dignity entitles plaintiff to punitive damages in addition to compensatory relief. Prayer for relief. Wherefore, plaintiff respectfully requests that this court enter judgment in her favor and against all defendants as follows: awarding compensatory damages in an amount to be determined at trial, awarding punitive damages for willful and malicious conduct, awarding back pay, front pay, and benefits as appropriate under state and city employment laws, awarding attorney's fees, costs, and expenses of litigation, awarding interest as allowed by law, and granting such other and further relief as the court may deem just and proper.